Hello and welcome from Buenos Aires, Argentina to this episode of Crossing Borders with Nathan Lustig, where Nate has conversations with entrepreneurs doing business across borders and the people who support them, with a focus on those that have some connection to Latin America. My name is Josefina Dominguezino, and I am an editor for LatinList, a proud sponsor of the Crossing Borders podcast. Sign up for our weekly updates on latinlist.com to get a summary of the week's biggest headlines in Latin American tech news. Nate's guest today is Gabriela Estrada, co-founder and CFO of Vexi, a fintech that is on a mission to make credit accessible to Mexico's underbanked population. They talk about how Gabriela fell in love with fintech coming from a more traditional financial background, as well as some of the challenges she faces as a female founder when seeking investment from venture capital firms. They also discuss the limitations and the opportunities of being a startup that offers debit cards versus credit cards in Latin America, and how Vexi has taken it upon itself to increase financial literacy in Mexico. We hope you enjoy this conversation with Gabriela Estrada.
Hey, Gabriela, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being willing to do it.
Hi, thank you, Nathan. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Where are you in the world today?
Well, I'm in Mexico City at home at my office. I normally do home office, so these last 2-3 months haven't felt that strange or that weird for me, even though normally I go out for meetings or something, and for 2-3 months I've been just working from home and having all meetings like this, like a video conferences or something like that. It's been good.
Tell me a little bit about your business. What do you do?
Well, co-founder and CFO at Vexi. Vexi, it's a digital bank. We launched to the public in April 2018. We decided to go first with the anchor product being a credit card, for, like a first experience credit card for underbanked population here in Mexico. A very interesting statistic of the financial services coverage in Mexico is that only 1 out of 10 adults in Mexico have access to a credit card. So there are millions and millions of people, more than 70 million people, that doesn't have never the opportunity to start building their credit history, which is the normal way for many of us to start our credit history. So someone tells you go and apply for a credit card, so you start building your credit history for the moment you need it, either because you need an auto loan, or because you need a mortgage, or because you need a personal loan to finance a personal project or whatever. So millions of people in Mexico are not able to do that, so we decided to launch Vexi, and so far we have been like 2 years in the market, and we have issued 70,000 cards so far.
Very nice. And talk a little bit about the day-to-day of your users that maybe someone outside of Mexico wouldn't understand well, because I've been talking to U.S. venture capitalists who are looking at the region. One of the biggest things that they don't understand is just how different the day-to-day reality of the people have that the problem, or whose problem you're trying to solve, is.
Yeah, very good question. So, for example, we focus on 3 main groups of clients. So that will be normally banked outside Mexico. In any developed country, they will be banked. So we are focusing on university students, for example. So many of them, or most of them, are already economically active. So they are working, either they have part-time jobs or they have full-time jobs. They work at like part-times in big companies, or they are waiters, or they are doing something. Maybe they are micro-entrepreneurs while they are studying. So they do have income, but their income is not, they cannot prove it, because maybe it's like the micro-entrepreneurs I'm telling you, maybe they are buying and selling stuff, or their wage is so small for the threshold that normal banks are asking for. So, and they don't have any previous credit history, so they are not able to get service from a traditional bank. The other group we focus on are young professionals. So the next group, well, when they get out from university, they graduate from university, they start their professional life, and their wages are kind of really small. And here we're speaking about many professions that they are producing less than 500, the equivalent to $500 per month, and they are not suitable for being creditworthy at any traditional bank. And here you will find even doctors, when they just graduate from medicine school, they have less than $5,000, which are $250 in income per month. So we have this other group, and then the last or final group we focus on are these micro entrepreneurs. And here we find a vast universe of people that they are doing their business, they are buying and selling, they are doing their professional services, either fixing or doing something with technology, or they have their own, in Mexico, you live here, so all these little stalls of selling tacos or selling juices or selling whatever they can do. So 30 million people in Mexico live in what we call the informal economy. So they are part of this informal economy, as they do not have like taxed income. So they are kind of invisible because they cannot prove to anyone they are making money. So banks doesn't even allow them to be in their branches. So we're focusing on these three groups. The thing they all have in common, besides they are young people, they are from 18 to 35 years old, is that they don't have this access to traditional financial services. They don't have this access to formal credit. There are another two qualities that are really important from this group of people. One is they have very high labor mobility. So today they are waiters, and next month they lose this job because of whatever, and they are being cashiers in something else, or they are salespersons. So they have super high labor mobility. So they always continue to find a way to have income. And the other thing is they are super resilient because of this labor mobility. They are super resilient to financial crisis, and we are seeing it. We saw it in the previous financial crisis in 2008, 2009, and we are seeing it right now because the amount of people that continues to pay their credit card to us current times haven't decreased at the base that have happened at the traditional banks. The last thing is that they are really loyal to the people that believe in them, because there are not so many institutions that trust them. So when someone trusts them, they really want to repay that trust.
Awesome. And we'll go a little deeper into that in a little bit here. But I wanted to go into your background. So where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Chihuahua. It's a city in the northern Mexico. I've been living in Mexico City for 15 years now. So I'm what traditionally we will call here in Mexico are completely chilanga. So.
And what's do you have any extra kind of insight into the ecosystem back in your home state? Is there anything getting built there? I think you're the first entrepreneur from Chihuahua on the podcast, so wanted to see if there's anything interesting going on in the ecosystem.
There are a couple of startups that are working directly from Chihuahua. It's really hard for them because most of the ecosystem moves in the three main cities, Mexico City, Guadalajara, Monterrey. So for them, it's really hard because they don't even speak the language a startup or the ecosystem or the VCs speak. So it's really hard. I have met some of those founders, and they are building something really good and something really interesting in the fintech scene, but they don't get the support they need just because they are really far away of the main three focus of ecosystem development here in Mexico. I believe if I haven't moved to Mexico City, I haven't done many things in my career, and for sure I don't believe I would have become an entrepreneur.
So talking about becoming an entrepreneur, did you know that you wanted to be one from a young age, or is it something that came up in your career?
I believe it's something I fell with love very late in my career, and that has happened a lot with many things in my life. all my family are kind of entrepreneurs. They have these trees plantations over there. They sell pecan in Chihuahua. So having your own business and managing your own business is not a strange thing for me. But being the first in my family that had the opportunity to study a master's degree abroad, I went to Spain, to Madrid, early in my life. I wanted to go and get into the financial system and work in these big corporations. So I started working in American Express, and I jumped into Citi, and then I started like this super fast growing career in Citi, where I got to lead the largest business in the corporate bank in Citi in Mexico, being the mostly only woman director, and of course, by far the younger. All my peers were like 10 to 15 years older than me. I felt like my proud was receiving a lot of attention and a lot of it in the wrong way, you know? And somewhere in my career, I decided that was not the thing that I wanted for my history, that I wanted to do something with much more purpose than managing a big business and being the super banker. And so I decided to leave the bank almost on the peak of my career. And I just left the country. And when I came back to Mexico, one of my best friends was founding what today is Vexi. And he invited me to join the team. And at the beginning, I didn't even know what fintech was. So at the beginning was like something good to do while I was deciding what to do next. But 3 months later, I completely fell in love with the power of fintech, with the power of raising or beginning and raising your own business, and the power that we have as entrepreneurs to impact the life of the community we are living in. So that was the reason I decided to become and to stay an entrepreneur. It was not something I clearly knew since the beginning. For sure, it was not. It was something that I just faced somewhere in career, and then I decided it was the correct thing to do.
What was it like being both a younger person and a woman in banking in a very conservative Mexico during your career?
Certainly, it was not an easy thing. I got used, and it was really bad, but I got used to be the only woman at the table for so many years. So at the beginning, it was really harsh, but then I find my way, you know? I find how to use that differences and how to use that kind of condescence that I receive in all those meetings to work at my benefit. So then I became really good at it. So it's really sad. It's really sad that we women in finance in general, not just in fintech, we are faced to these kind of situations where we are so many few of us in senior positions, because at the base level, we are almost 50-50. And women, I believe at least in Citi, there were like 53% women all across the company. So larger proportion than male, but at decision-making positions, we were less than 10%. So it's sad, but I believe we are changing it little by little. It was not the same the first year when I joined the financial system than today, for example. Today, you find many extraordinary and outstanding women in leadership positions that they are continuously breaking the glass for the rest of us. So that's really inspiring.
What lesson or lessons did you learn that helped you start to do really well inside the bank?
I believe those small things that helped me across my career are the same things that are helping me today that I'm an entrepreneur. And the first thing is that at the beginning, we didn't call them mentors, but now that you reflect on that, they were my mentors. So I had so many mentors across my career. They were my bosses. So we find a way to work so very well that they kind of adopted me. So they keep helping me to giving me counsel. So they were advising me to how to do it better. So having a mentor was very important in my career. The next I learned, it was maybe because of my mentors, that you need to find the right key indicators of all of the businesses you are within. And because you cannot you cannot manage the whole business. It's impossible. And when you are growing in responsibility, it gets even more impossible. So you need to find those 3, mostly 5 key indicators, and then you need to focus on keeping and watching and maintaining and increasing them, the most important ones. And I believe I got really, really good at doing those 2 things. And also managing communication. I guess human relations are so complex that manage and finding the correct way to communicating all across the different personalities and the different seniorities you will find in your professional life is key. So kind of became or becoming a translator of helping someone else to get the right message to the right people. I believe that was another thing that really helped me through my career and still helping me right now.
You said you left the banking career at the top of your career, top of your game. What did your friends and family think when you were leaving the bank and to go into an entrepreneurship career?
You know, there was a mix of reactions. I believe there were so many people that knew me so well that were so very happy, and they were cheering for me, and they were like, that's the way to go, because you're going after your heart and after what you really want and after what's really gonna make you happy. And then there were those were, I don't know, 20% of the people, and then the other 80, they thought I was completely crazy. And that included most of the people that used to work with me in the bank. But I was really fortunate that my family, they were completely believing in. So I remember a lot of speaking with both my parents close to Christmas before I resigned to the bank, and I was telling them what I was gonna do, and both of your reactions were mostly the same. And they were like, okay, I really don't understand what you are doing, but most of your life I haven't understand why you are doing what you are doing, but you have always demonstrated us that you do the right thing. So although we don't understand what you are doing right now, we completely believe you are doing the right thing. So I received so much empowerment from them that I had the bravery enough to take that leap that at the end of the day drove me to Vexi.
And you could have picked any sort of problem you wanted to solve or any sort of opportunity that you wanted to go into, but you ended up choosing Vexi. Why did you choose this problem in this company?
I believe it had to do a lot with my financial background. And since I was in the bank, I believe I was always thinking on how to better help the people. So I was focusing at that time on my team and their families and their well-being. But I was really frustrated because I saw so many disparities or differences among Mexicans. And in Mexico City, you know, it's really clear because, you know, you go everywhere, and everywhere in the city you can see these huge economic differences and how these economic differences define the future of many lives in this country. So for sure I knew it had the best way to use my knowledge was to leveraging on what I have learned in my career and try to find a way to use that knowledge to help people. So focusing on building credit and making credit accessible. There's so many studies on how the credit can multiply the economy. And we have seen it right now in the people we have as clients in Vexi, how we are helping them in improving their quality of life, in their resilience, covering emergencies. So I believe I did the right choice. At the beginning, it was more like the project that was in front of my eyes, but the more I learned about how important this could be for many millions of lives, I decided to stick to this project and go for it.
One of the first questions that neobank founders have to figure out is, do you start with doing just a debit card or do you start by doing credit? Talk about the decision to do credit and why it was important to your growth.
I believe it's a really crucial decision. So you are covering or you are going after two very different needs, In the debit card has been a huge success in Europe, but in Europe, the reality of the financial services coverage is really different to that in Latin America. In Europe, is the inclusion, the coverage, it's almost full. So the problems you have over there are more regarding customer experience and the lack of certain products like cross-currency, or even the ability to get a digital account instead of having to go to the banking branch. So debit cards have been a huge success over there. But when you come to the Latin American reality, what people suffer here are these liquidity gaps all across the month, because they live like with the money that they earn. So that's the only thing they have, but they don't receive it on a daily basis. So they have these liquidity gaps all across the month. And over there is where the credit card can be really, really game changer for them, because they can help them to cover all those liquidity gaps across the month. And if they learn the sufficient financial literacy, they can even go for it without paying interests. So it could be a huge game changer for many and many, many, not just Mexicans, but Latin Americans. So the objective of getting the instrument, it's really, really, really different. It's not the same necessity they are covering with a debit than with a credit. And looking at that liquidity gaps that the Mexicans have, it's that why we decided to go first for credit. It's harder than offering as kind of simple, let's call it like that, debit card. You need to manage many other factors. Obviously, you need to find a way to underwrite to people that hasn't been underwritten before or hasn't received any kind of formal credit before. So you need to get really creative on finding the ways to defining who are creditworthy and who are not. But when you find it, you are kind of changing lives, and that's crucial. That creates lots of loyalty, which is really different, and we can find it in our clients. The loyalty, the trust that we give them, and how they are returning it to us as a community builder, that's invaluable.
And I would think that the substitution, the replacement that you're doing for those liquidity gaps many times are like informal, basically loan sharks, that you're able to save people from going into debt with bad people who are charging 100% a week type things, and helping them kind of smooth those gaps.
Correct. Yes, exactly. That's some of the things we are measuring with Vexi. We ask them, we have like this survey that we do to our clients whenever they reach 3 months with us. It's permanent. And so we ask them exactly that question. If before having Vexi, they used to use these kind of really expensive ways of financing themselves. And we define expensive as more than 10% per month. And I believe 65% of the people tell us they used to use that kind of financing system before having Vexi. And almost 50% are able to stop using it after having Vexi. So we are just going into that thing that you just mentioned. The other thing is financing emergencies. These people have kids that get sick or that need to get a new book or a new notebook for the school, and in their normal way they just wouldn't have a way to cover for that additional expense. And with Vexi they can cover it and then repay it 10 days later. So I believe we are really, really, really going after key needs of our customers.
Another thing you mentioned is financial literacy. Talk about how you're attacking that and why it's important.
It's not an easy thing, It's not an easy thing. I believe our customers and in general Mexican people, not just our customers, are not very finance literate. It's hard to manage a debit card, but it's much harder to manage a credit card. So we are continuously giving them tips, both in our app. The app has some expense management tools on it. We try to really help them understand very key concepts, obviously interest rate, obviously all the dates that are involved with their credit cards. And then we send them tips. We call it Vexi tips. We send them through all of our channels, social networks, through our app, direct email, for them to start understanding what they are doing and what can they do to improve, both saving, both managing their expenses, if they have to go in debt, how to pay the less interest and how to use the debt in their favor. So we are continuously working on that. It's not perfect and we will need to get better and improving, but I believe this is something that even the government should go and start like giving these very key concepts since the very, very young kids.
Yeah, I think financial literacy is one of those things that, along with health and food education, that governments would have and NGOs too would have the biggest kind of bang for their buck in Latin America. That would really, really help a lot.
Yes.
And would be great to see more.
Completely agree. I believe the payoff of that investment at very early age of the people will really pay off.
You mentioned earlier that you use many of the same strategies from being one of the only women in the room in the executive level at a bank to being one of the only women in the room in venture capital situations or in startups. Talk a little bit about your experience and some of the lessons learned in that part of your career.
Yeah, I believe I'm going to get a little bit repetitive with what most of us female founders face when we are raising money, but it's not easy to build relationships with male VCs because of all the misunderstanding that can be on this way. So either they could be really friendly or they could be really distant. So trying to find the right amount of communication to become their partner, it's key on the process. And I believe everything that I learned during my banking career helps me a lot in that way, to find the right way of communicating with VCs, especially senior level VCs. It's harder for me with younger people. We get so many questions that gets really weird, we female founders. And me, it's rare that I go by myself to any VC meeting. Normally we are going, both my partner, the CEO, and myself. So, but even though we are both in the room, I believe 20 to 25% of the times we have received the question whether we are just business partners, but if we are romantic partners, and we are not. We are friends. Actually, I have my partner on the other room. So it's really weird because I'm sure that if there are two male founders in the room, they won't get that kind of questions. So the other thing that's been like really, really hard for me, I really need to get very, very, very concentrated when I'm speaking to any VC, is this thing of the gender bias that we have heard a lot, that most of the people, VCs or not VCs, males or females, people tend to ask me about the risks of the business instead of the potential of the business. So, and it's really weird because at the beginning I was not really aware of this, and being me not just the CFO but the risk director at the company, I was kind of used to receive the risk related questions in the company until I realized that it was not just because of my position but because of my gender, that they continuously were asking me about how to face the risks that my business possess. So I really need to get very concentrated to convert those questions potentiality. So, and that's really tired, to be that kind of concentrated, to be really conscious when they are making me these questions and they don't realize it, and I need to change the question to make it become an opportunity. It's really tiresome. But I believe everything is changing, and more I find more VCs that are trying to be conscious of this. So I believe, and I've seen many women going into VC, and I'm really positive about it will be changing in the years to come.
Yeah, the risk versus reward bias that has been in lots of studies and lots of conversations with female founders is so weird.
Yeah.
It's a weird one. So it's good that you highlight it.
It's terrible. It's terrible, but it's real. It's really real. and we need to use it at our favor. We now know it, so use it.
Do you have any books, blogs, podcasts, or documentaries you like to recommend to people, whether about business or just life in general?
Well, I don't have many because I like to read a lot, but I tend to read nothing related to business. So I just tend to read whatever makes my mind fly away from what I'm doing on my day-to-day. But there's one book that I really, really liked, that it goes a lot with my philosophy and Vexi's philosophy and my partner's philosophy. And many of you, of course, have heard about it. It's called Delivering Happiness. And it's about the Zappos founder, or something like that is pronounced. Mm-hmm. And it's really, really, really powerful because it really mentions and it really drives you about the importance of the culture, the importance of the team, and the passion, and how all of this helping purpose will drive you to profit. So for us, it's been one of the best readings that we have done, both my partner and I, and we try to apply what we can to our day-to-day reality in Vexi.
What advice would you give to other people who just want to get away from work?
I believe I will tell everyone to believe in themselves. I think one of the reasons it took me a lot to realize I needed to change my career, I did it after almost 15 years in banking, was that at the very, very deep level, I didn't believe I could do something else. So I believe the best advice I can give anyone is to know yourself very well. Ask yourselves lots of questions, especially in regards of if what you are doing makes you really happy and not just give you money. And if the answer is not, then follow your heart and go for it. Because if you really believe in that, you're going to be able to do it. And if anything happens and it's not a complete success, you're going to learn so much in the way that's going to be worth it.
What's next for Vexi over the next year or two?
What's next for Vexi? I believe we have so many plans for the company. Obviously, we want to grow the number of people we are working with, the number of customers. We would like in the next couple of years to reach 1 million Mexicans, or well, not just Mexicans, because we have so many foreigners clients here in Mexico, but the first million clients here in Mexico. But we want to make the jump to the next digital banking offering to cover some other gaps that our clients might face. So obviously the next, I believe, clear path is to offer them some other products like marketplace. We have been speaking about insurance. We have been speaking about personal loans. We have been speaking about auto loans to some of our clients. We will need to find either the partner for the insurance portion and the correct source of funding for the other two products. But I believe that's the correct way of fulfilling the whole financial needs of our customer base.
Thanks for taking the time to share your story. Really enjoyed it. And I'm excited to see as you continue to grow the business over the next year or two. So thanks again for doing it.
Thanks, Nathan, to you, and thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed this so much.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of Crossing Borders with our guest, Gabriela Estrada. And thank you to Angel for helping produce this podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share with a friend and give us a rating on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's the best way to share what's going on in Latin America's ecosystem.